in the field of education, we create this hero complex for educators. And, you as a teacher, you are the hero in this child's life. And if you don't do this, and and it becomes your entire identity too, as a teacher, as a leader. And so all of that, you have to be careful with. You have to really, really slow down, and you have to say, I am a teacher, I am a principal, I am a school counselor, and I am a human being in myself, and who is that person?
Welcome to Oxygen for Educators. I'm one of your hosts, Michelle Kinder, and you'll meet Chris Kent Phelps in just a bit. It's our hope to bring you thought-provoking, unscripted conversations full of actionable ideas to fuel your important work in the world. Thanks for tuning in. This space is for you. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Michelle. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. We are getting to meet, to me, someone whose story is so interesting in and of itself, but the conversation with her brought up so many meta issues that I just can't wait for our breakdown and for listeners to get to know Claudia.
Love it. Love it. Should I introduce her?
Yes, please.
Okay. We are about to meet Claudia Vega. She is a former public educator for over 20 years. Turned entrepreneur and nonprofit leader alongside her former educator husband, which I thought was very cool. She is the founder of Whose Books, which is a social impact indie bookstore in Dallas's Oak Cliff neighborhood, and the nonprofit ARCO, which stands for Activating Reading Communities Organization. And she'll talk a lot about how she got there and why she got there. But the through line to me was that books and journalism seem to have always been her jam. And she's really become an advocate for creating a reading culture, which I think our listeners can apply to their classrooms and campuses through listening to her story. So I found it so interesting, and I'm happy to share that interview with our listeners.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Hello, Claudia.
Hi.
Welcome.
I'm excited to be here, Michelle. Thanks for having me.
You're such an inspiring person, and I think you're going to be highly inspiring to the guests, both your arc and your story, but also your willingness to create the life you want and step into something that you saw that the community needed that also matched your passion. I just think you're going to light something up in people.
Oh, thank you.
So exciting. So let me start with just asking you to tell us your story, and you pick where you start and you pick how deep you go, but we want to hear about how you got to this point.
That's a lot. Let's see. I think I'll start us as close as we can to where we are at this point.
Okay.
So I have over 20 years in public education. And so I started off as a high school teacher. I taught journalism, a newspaper, a yearbook at Sunset High School, which was my alma mater. And then, it was pretty cool.
So cool.
And really thought that I was only going to teach for a couple of years because my former principal had invited me back to rebuild the journalism program there. And I had other ideas, right, of what I was going to do. So I taught for a few years at Sunset. And after my commitment was completed, I went and I worked for the city of Dallas and I was on the team that opened up the Latino Cultural Center, and just really enjoyed learning from the city manager's office and the Office of Arts and Culture, what it meant to build space in a community and to do it in a way that is inclusive. So I did that for a few years, and I was missing the classroom. So I found my way back into education and eventually became a campus leader and a principal of Mata Montessori, and then later Sunset High School. And so it was very full circle. So it was a great opportunity.
So not to interrupt you, but
No,
it
go
catches
ahead.
my attention what a good example that is of scaffolding. Like your zig into the city of Dallas and the Latino Culture Center and working in that space.
Yes.
How that so prepared you for this moment, but at that point it might have felt like a
It was
diversion.
disconnected. Right,
Yeah,
right. It
so
might have felt like it was
interesting.
disconnected.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then, after we hit the 20-year mark, and my husband alongside this, he also is in public or was in public education for many years too. But we had this lifelong dream of like, when we retire, right? We're going to open this cute little bookshop for the community. It's going to be great. And we had an idea of what retirement was going to look like. During COVID, however, we started to reevaluate a lot of things. And then after returning and reopening the school and making sure that things were going well, I really thought to myself, like, why do we have to wait until traditional, retirement age? And
That blows me back in my chair. Like I have to highlight that because that question and sitting with that question could be so transformative for every single one of us. Like, why do you have to wait on ... Like everyone will know how to finish that sentence.
Right.
But wow.
And it was a tough question, right? It was one that I had to sit with for a long time. I would spend my free time, which was not very much, right? Very little, but researching and learning and like, what would it take to open a bookstore? And started to entertain this idea. I started to reach out to people in the community that had space and like, what would it financially mean? What would it mean, in terms of securing a location? And I started to realize that some of the messages or the responses I was getting back is that Oak Cliff didn't need another bookstore, that people don't read, that we wouldn't be successful. And it enraged me, right? It was maddening. But it also made me think about things a little bit differently. In education, we have struggled, we're still struggling, right, with the achievement gap for reading across the state, across the country. But specifically in the community that I grew up in, which is Oak Cliff, and as many people know, in the southern sector of Dallas, the achievement rates in reading, is a significant gap. And so I started to really think about, what was my lived experience as a child, and what was it as a young mother and a teacher. And the common thread was that, like, I had always been exposed to literature and to books and a very strong reading culture because my parents really believed in it. So we grew up in bookstores, but the bookstores weren't here in our neighborhood, right? We had to travel north, or we had to travel to the suburbs. And it was like, well, why haven't we had continued and open access to this? And we've had libraries, of course, and they've served a wonderful role. But they had their own limitations too, right? With buying power, with access to hours, with their budgets being cut on a regular basis. So I started to investigate, like, okay, what about, we know what reading achievement is, and we know what you need to get there skill set wise, right? We have spent a lot of time studying that, and we know that in education, we've made some big blunders in that area too, right? But what I really started to uncover as I pulled the onion layers back was that, this isn't necessarily a skill set deficit. It starts way before that. And it's a deficit of the reading culture, right?
Wow.
That it's
Wow.
not something that is, that when we talk about reading culture, we're talking about like how books and literature are valued, how they're shared, how they're revered to within a community, in a home and an organization, right? And so when we look at that, and it takes a lot of different things to make that happen, right? You need bookstores, you need literary events, you need libraries, you need books, access to books. You need to be able to build, a home library. All of these things contribute to building a strong reading culture. And so I started to look at it through that lens, right? Like, does our community have a thriving reading culture? And in many parts of our community, I think it does. There is, right? Dallas is a very literary city. But it doesn't always feel, or it hasn't always felt accessible to everyone. And so one of the things that I share with people is like, imagine that you've never been in a bookstore before, right? You've never, ever stepped foot in a bookstore. And then you step into one to the very first time. And you're kind of taken aback. You don't know what it is or how to do, right? Or how to engage with that space. And we have that happen every day because there are people in our community, in our city, that have never had access to a bookstore before. And so when they come in, they're a little bit overwhelmed with like, what is this place? And I'll have people ask me like, is this like Blockbuster? Do I tell you, or is it a library, or do I have to pay to come in? Is it like
you just dated yourself big time with the Blockbuster reference, but I'm with you.
Yes. And so they'll ask all these questions, and they'll like, how do I know how much the book cost, right? Like all of these little things that to an avid reader, someone who has grown up with complete access to books, it's like, it's mind-blowing. You're like, what do you mean? Where's the price of the book?
Yeah, we take it for granted.
We take it for granted. And these are things that, I realized, and I was like, all the more reason why we need to open the bookstore. And having our, potential leasers or property owners kind of keep that for us was also frustrating.
Yeah.
And so, to make that long part of the story short, I cashed in my retirement and I completely self-funded opening up the bookstore.
Wow.
And we were able to start in a small incubator space over at Tyler Station, and said, kind of proof of concept. And the community was ready and they wanted more. And we very quickly outgrew that space, and really had to rethink what our model was going to be like too, because we had some customers who had always been lifelong readers and were excited to have another place that they could get books close to home. But more than anything, the majority of our community members were people who had never had access to this before, who were new to bookstores and to what they offer. And it's not it's hard because we get classified as a retail space, right? But we're not retail, we're a cultural hub, right? We're a community space. And so what we decided to do is to then launch our nonprofit, which is ARCO. And ARCO stands for Activating Reading Communities Organization. And together, Whose Books and ARCO have really created a space for people to celebrate literature, to come together and discover literature for the first time, alongside people who have, been long admirers and lovers of literature. And it's doing it in a way that is, it's very grassroots, it's very welcoming, and it's a safe space for people to come and explore and not feel intimidated. It has been one of the most rewarding things, I would say, in my adult life. So
I feel it. Like I feel it in my bones, like reading about you and talking to you today. I feel that.
Thank you.
So strongly. And as you tell your story, the points where you hit a barrier and that, instead of stopping you, allowed you to zoom out
Yeah.
and see the bigger picture, that it was really a culture of reading issue, not just a retail space, like that you were trying to just create something so much bigger than you might have created if everything had gone smoothly from the jump.
Well, and it took a lot of reflection, and part of it was lived experience, and part of it was research, right? And the big piece, I think, for me, when things started to really click, is there is United for Literacy has what they call a book desert map. And it's basically a heat map that they've done of all over the country. They've pulled data from multiple data sources, including the census and the National Education Agency. And with this heat map, they've identified what they call book deserts, right? And book deserts are communities or geographical area that has limited access to book ownership, and they predict how many books are in a household, right? And so when I was looking at this heat map, I looked at it, and I was looking at it alongside the traditional kind of city of Dallas map. And then I saw very clearly that the concentrated areas of these heat maps where book deserts were in the southern sector of Dallas, the majority of them, right?
Yeah.
And areas that were low income, right, throughout the Metroplex. In the southern sector, like the only zip code that was not fully in the book desert, but was partly there, was the 75208 zip code. And that's because Kessler Park, which is an affluent neighborhood, sits within it. But outside of that, it was like red, 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 red.
Yeah.
And so that triggered a thought to me. And it's like, I've seen similar data before. Let me peel this back. And so then I looked at the redlining maps that the city of, that we have for the city that have become now historic documents, and looking to see that the redlining maps that were used to decide when and where to invest in communities, right, were the exact same kind of overlay of the book desert map. And what we know to be food deserts, and what we know to be healthcare deserts. And so it all came back to me at that moment that, like, these are the things that historically marginalized and disenfranchised communities suffer with, right? Is lack of access to everyday things that contribute to your quality of life, right? Books and the ownership of books, and being able to browse a bookstore and purchase 2 to 3 books is a luxury in our country. It is a luxury, right? Because if you are on a fixed income, or you have limited disposable income, and let's say your budget for the week is $200, you're not going to go and spend it on books, right? You're going to put food on the table. So then, to me, at that point, there was no turning back, right? This was an equity issue. This was an access issue for our communities. And if we really want to see the benefits of what a strong reading culture is, and what that can do to reading achievement, in schools, then it means that we have to create it. And that's what I felt we needed to do, right? It's like, how can we create that here in our neighborhood? And not to take away from Lucky Dogs, which is a used bookstore that has been in our neighborhood for a long time, and the Wild Detectives that has been in they were the ones that have really kind of paved some of the way for it. But we needed something that was a little bit more family focused, community focused, that addressed how to bring people in an inclusive way. And from newborns all the way to their grandparents, right? And so, and I think that's where our experience as educators came in, right? And knowing what we wanted to do and how we wanted to engage the community. So
there's so much in that. Like, I feel flooded with all my potential follow-up questions, but I just want to say out loud, like, the point I heard you make, which is there were decisions in our history that created this lack of access and opportunity in the sectored city that we live in.
Yep.
And the way we move past it is by making current decisions. It's not just going to magically happen. And you are part of that.
We're trying to be, right?
Yeah.
And I think it has been a roller coaster, right? There are times when getting people to understand, like, you know, the importance of it. Like, we have, you know, we'll have people ask, like, well, why would I want to buy a book, right? Like, if I've read it, why would, you know, what's the reasoning for it? And so, and these are young adults in some instances. And I say, well, you know, you buy a music, right? You pay and purchase and download for music, and you listen to it multiple times. And books are very similar in that way, right? You can purchase a book, you can read it, you might read it right away, you might not read it for a while until the time is right. I said, but then once you find one that resonates with you, you revisit it again. It leads you to another book or another author. And in this journey, you get to discover not only yourself, but other people's perspectives, other people's stories and backgrounds. And it's a way that we can become connected in a place that sometimes doesn't feel, you know, that we are. And so it's been really wonderful connecting with our community in those ways. And people have come to us. We have people who have walked into the store and cry because they are so overwhelmed with the representation that they see in our curation. And I don't think that I was prepared for that. And so then I'm a big old baby and I'm crying and they're crying. And then someone else walks in and is like, what's going on here? Why are people crying?
We're healing in real time.
Right. And like, you know, and people saying like, I have never felt so seen before, right?
Yeah.
To see, you know, people like me on the cover of the books, or you know, authors with my last name on the shelf, right? Or stories about something that reminds me of my grandmother, and so that has been an absolute wonder, right?
Wow.
That's something that we truly love. The other thing that has been, and this is really more on our nonprofit side, is that we will work with people and sometimes small organizations, and we look at and we kind of take time in a workshop to reflect on what is your relationship with reading. Because what we have found is that if the parent has a fractured relationship with reading, then that, of course, is in most instances going to influence or impact the child, right?
Wow.
And so peeling those layers back and asking people, like, what's your first memory of a book, right? Was it a positive or a negative memory? And then why? And then at what point did that shift? And taking them on this like journey of what their relationship with reading is, we've been able to unearth and uncover some things that, like, you know, that happen in their early formative years that really shape them, and where they have labeled themselves, I'm a non-reader, or I'm a bad reader, or I can't do this because. And so what we try to do through our programming is to reintroduce reading to them, right? And to say, you know, reading and books and literature does not have to be scary. It does not have to be a chore. It doesn't have to be something that you're forced to do. It's something where you can explore and discover and reconnect with yourself. And that, I think, is the most rewarding thing that we do, is when we hear back from people in our community or organizations that we've worked with that said, like, it's completely changed, my approach with books. And I'm reading now, and because I'm reading, my kids see me reading, they ask questions about it. And, that's why we're here today, to get, some books for them.
Wow.
And so it's been a remarkable experience through our nonprofit. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just thinking about what you're sharing and realizing that so often when we're trying to attend to disparity, we get captured by the physical needs.
Yeah.
Understandably. Food disparity, housing disparity, like all of that is so important. But in the absence of also attending to the soul level disparity, which comes through relationships with literature and books and feeling valued and seen and represented, all of those things, in the absence of attending to that part of the spectrum, people in the community are handicapped to move their own community goals forward as they see them, because we've put them in a deprived black and white world instead of a multicolored, abundant world. And then we're like, why aren't you showing up in a way that ... And it's like, no, we have to attend to all of it. We have to attend to the food disparities, the housing, but also the literature and all of the ways we make space for our full humanity.
Yeah.
That also has been cut off by historical decision making.
Yeah.
And just to say the obvious out loud, some of that historical decision making has created more vibrant connection with soul and family and values and community than you see in more in areas that are more affluent and have more access and opportunity. I think it's a complicated picture, but that's all swirling.
Absolutely. It's very complicated, right? And I want to be careful not to imply that if you've never been in a bookstore and you've never finished a book, that you are lacking something, right? Like that's
it's
not...
like the system is lacking if it cuts you off from it, not you.
Right. But you should have the choice, right?
Yes.
To be able to say, this is not the media that I want to consume art in, right? But you should be able to have that choice.
Yeah.
It should not have been made for you,
Right.
And there's through the entire process of opening the store and forming the nonprofit, I saw different gatekeeping practices that were used, right?
Yeah.
And it just floored me. And so when you first open up a bookstore and you set up accounts with the book distributors and the publishers, some of the questions that they ask on the application is, what's the median income of the zip codes that you're going to be servicing? What's the education level? What universities are within your, right? And so all of that is a lot of red flags, right?
So many assumptions built into that are just insulting.
Yes. And so, we kind of we created and opened the store in maybe not the most traditional way, because we didn't want some of those things to stand in our way of curating a selection of books that we thought would represent our community. And in fact, we surveyed our community, right? We put out community surveys and asked, what are you hoping to see? What type of authors? What kind of genres? And it's ever changing. It's always changing. But for the initial stocking, we made sure to do that. And so we didn't do it in a traditional way. I had to find a way to break away from something that I really loved and was really good at, but it was not meeting the needs of my family and the needs of myself anymore. And that was being a leader in public education, right? It was taking more for me and my family that I could replenish, right?
Yeah.
And so I had to find a way to be okay with saying I'm going to leave that, and I'm going to try something new. But then going into this new thing, also finding a way to say we're going to do it in a way that maybe it hasn't been done before.
Yeah.
Which means there's not really a roadmap, and we're going to build this. And if I fail, which I very likely can fail at this, right? It's okay, because I failed before, right? Like, and you just get back up and you start over again.
Yeah, yeah. And you trust the scaffolding of your life, like that detour your life took to work in Dallas, city of Dallas for a while. Like, whatever happens with this, you trust the scaffolding that it's going to take you to some other expression of how you're going to serve your community.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question for you that I think will really help a lot of listeners.
Okay.
In that moment when you were feeling floored by the gatekeeping and the barriers, what was your process, or what factors helped you experience that and not get flattened but get fueled?
Yeah, I think it is. I think there's just something inherent in me that I was raised a certain way that is like, don't let anybody tell you what you're capable of and what you can do. And I've always, approached things that way. But when I realized that these were kind of expectations or limitations that were put not only on me, but on my community, then I got in a very kind of mama bear protective, like, no, we're not going to do that. And so, you get you're scrappy, you're resourceful, you figure things out. But to me, it was like, we should have. And now Oak Cliff has 6 independent bookstores in a walkable mile. And five in a walkable mile, but still,
amazing.
It's amazing, right? And there's still a lot of work to be done, right? Like that the access is there now, right? In multiple different ways. And then how do we continue to cultivate that? And I think one of the things that I learned from moving from public education into entrepreneurship and nonprofit work is that the small business community in our city and in our area is absolutely phenomenal. There are community leaders that oftentimes get overlooked in many ways, right? Because some people think, oh, they're profiting off of this, right?
Yeah.
But they are putting so much into our community, and being able to collaborate and work with the other bookstores and with the other small businesses to activate what we call reading culture, right? Has been such a phenomenal experience. And I think any time that it gets tough, because it gets tough, sometimes we're week to week, right? Like, you're running 2 different organizations. We have the bookstore, and then we have the nonprofit, and they inform each other and do a lot of things together. But there's times where it's like, whoo. Where totally. I remember where we would celebrate, like, yes, we can pay the mortgage. Another month, yay. Yes. And then there, so it is not for the faint of heart, right? There's a lot of work that goes into it. And then even on the nonprofit side too, we're trying to fundraise and get grants in a time where grants that have to do with equity and inclusion, have been eliminated. And we do address this as an equity issue. Book access and reading culture is an equity and inclusion issue. And so looking and regrouping this year on, like, how do we fundraise? How do we, get the grants that we need to get in order to continue to bring this programming to our community? In our first year, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to ask you, like, I do want to double click on that and get your thoughts. Like, this the current climate around inclusion and representation and celebrating differences and making space for everyone's story and even books
Yeah.
is so insane. Like if the 2012 version of Claudia and Michelle sat down and had tea with 2025 version of us, we would fully say these two ladies need to be committed. There's no way. There's no way this is going to be the reality around these issues in this time. But that is what we're living in. How do you make sense of it? How do you, like, what gives you the most despair? What gives you the most hope? What does it look like to be a counterforce? How are you thinking about all that?
Yeah, I mean, I've struggled with it, to be quite honest. I still have, most of our children are young adults now and out of public school education, but we have one that is a junior in high school, and there's a lot of conflicting, there's just a lot to digest in that.
Yeah.
But here's what most recently, as a matter of fact, we were talking with an author, Dr. Anna Tubbs. She is the author of Erased: What the American Patriarchy Has Hidden from Us. And we had a book club with her the other night. And her book, I was asking her, I said, how do you stay positive and hopeful when you've done this enormous amount of research? You've put together a comprehensive book that explains what the American patriarchy is and how it's influencing us in education, in women's rights, in equity. How do you stay positive, right? And hopeful in that? And what she said to me really, really has stuck with me. And I've been thinking about it a lot lately. And she said, I study it. She's like, I'm no longer surprised by it. She's like, every day, people will text or call and say, oh my God, today this. Oh no, today this.
Wow.
Or, oh,
yep.
she's like, I'm not surprised anymore. She's like, it's a cycle. The pendulum swings, right? And so she said, right now, I've studied it. I know it inside and out. I know that it is also a very fragile system and that it's going to break, and the pendulum is going to swing in the other direction, and we're going to find our place in a better space. And in the meantime, every relationship that we have, every decision that we make, every action that we make in our daily lives can help to inform that, right? And it was just she was so hopeful and really said that I can't let it hold me down. I use it as a point of reference to know that we're going to be approaching change here soon, and that has been something that I've been holding on to, because prior to that conversation and reading that book, I think a lot of it was, I knew a lot of this stuff. I know it. We know it. We can see where something's wrong. I would find myself trying not to watch the news for a couple days, which is an extreme point of privilege. I know and understand that, right? To say, oh, I'm going to shut off the news today. Trying to surround myself and create a bubble of people who, I feel comfortable with, and, creating these spaces for myself and for the people in my community. And I was thinking, I guess this is what I can do. This is how I can help. But after having that conversation with the author and talking in community with, our readers, it was like, yes, and, right?
Yes,
we're doing
and.
much more than that. We're doing much more than that, right? We, in everyday decisions of where we shop, of what we consume, what we're going to give our attention to, how we help each other and support each other. that I think is going to make, the change overall. And so it's challenging. It's hard. It takes grounding myself every day, because there are days that are tougher than others,
Yeah. 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 I mean, you'd be in a coma if that weren't true.
Right.
And I love her advice because, first of all, it puts what's happening in a context. Mm-hmm. And it also reminds each of us that this is collective and it's individual. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And there are tipping points. And so the more chaos and destruction that's happening in the larger ethos, what I've noticed is the more it pushes each of us into a deeper relationship with our own conscience and our own clarity of what is mine to do in the world in this time, and a different level of conviction and courage. Like, I think it has the potential of pulling us out of a collective coma that was, much more I-centered, much more hustle culture, much more capitalistic, and into a more we-centered chapter. I think where it gets anxiety provoking is, what's it going to take to get there?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And what does it look like for us to be living kind of on a razor's edge, knowing it could tilt in either direction?
Yeah.
But a place I ground myself in is, this is individual and collective work. Mm-hmm. And the point of a lot of what's happening is to paralyze us in fear and hopelessness, and anything we can do to not buy into that and instead become counterforces and agents for the values that we hold. It does matter. It does matter for each of us. It stacks up.
And I one of the things that I did not expect in opening up the bookstore, which is a community space, right? But I didn't expect it to be so impactful and profound in this way. We see on a weekly basis hundreds of people that come through, right? And there's beautiful, wonderful, good people, not just from our neighborhood, but from visiting neighborhoods, from people. I mean, we see good, well-meaning people every day.
Yeah.
And to be able to see it, to interact with strangers and to connect with them and feel at home with them in a matter of 5 minutes, because we've shared an interest in a specific type of art, or because we've connected over an author, or a song that was played in the bookstore. I mean, it is the most heartwarming, and it gives me hope, because there are so many wonderful people that we encounter every day. And it is my reminder that what's happening on that phone, what's being broadcast, on these screens is one part of what's happening in our world, right?
Yes.
It is one part of what's happening in our world.
Yes. Yes. And it's designed to enrage and dysregulate. So it should be listened to with some suspicion.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're in charge of how we regulate ourselves, and where what we want to think about, what we are wanting to consume, rather, right? And so it's choices that we make.
Hi, I'm Katie Worden, producer of Oxygen for Educators. I want to spotlight our sponsor, TackieBox. TackieBox is an elementary school program that pairs innovative content with a tactile tool in daily practice to teach children to self-monitor their own words and actions and their responses to others. It's a proven tool that reduces behavior incidents by 66%. Through daily self-reflection, students build self-awareness, self-regulation, and meaningful connections. TackieBox is a light lift for teachers with a big impact on student well-being. Go to tackybox.com to learn more and become a Tackybox district.
I wanted to get your advice before we wrap for educators that are maybe feeling that same thing you talked about, where it's like what this work is asking of me is not also replenishing me and my family at the same level. I think a lot of our listeners are feeling that right now. For you, there was an exit ramp that led you into another expression of your purpose. That'll be true for some people. Others, it'll be about how do I stay in this system and connect to something that gives me life. But what are your words of wisdom?
I think the very first thing is thank you to all the educators that are on campuses and in the classroom, because it has only become increasingly more difficult. And so we appreciate you in a million ways that we do not communicate, right?
Here.
I think that's the very first thing. And when you're in the classroom or on the campus leadership role, you can feel alone and isolated, unappreciated, and frustrated, right? Like we know that. I think for me, the biggest piece of advice that helped me was to really spend time connecting with myself, right? Like that was the biggest piece, is I had to spend time with myself and really think about where I was going, what felt good for me, like what are the things that I did that energized me, and what are the things that I was doing that was draining me, right? And really taking stock of that, and understanding that, like, I cannot do it all. So while I'm in this role as a teacher or as a principal or a school counselor, whatever it might be, then understanding, like, what are my responsibilities in this role, right? Can I still meet those responsibilities without sacrificing myself, right? That's the big one. And if the answer is, I think I can, then you need to do a little bit more digging, right? And you need to figure out, okay, then I can possibly stay and continue to do this work, but I need to figure out how to do it in a way that does not sacrifice me, right? That I'm not exhausting all parts of me on. And that can be really hard, because in the field of education, we create this hero complex for educators. And, you as a teacher, you are the hero in this child's life. And if you don't do this, and and it becomes your entire identity too, as a teacher, as a leader. And so all of that, you have to be careful with. You have to really, really slow down, and you have to say, I am a teacher, I am a principal, I am a school counselor, and I am a human being in myself, and who is that person, right? And
I feel convicted. I feel convicted. Like, by what you're saying, I think I've participated in that imbalance of hero worship, because I feel like teachers are so beat up right now, and counselors and administrators. But your point is so good. Like that there's an emotional trap there. In the same way it could give people meaning and purpose, it can also really skew what you're asked to give.
And if you don't know what is, you can be really good at something and it absolutely drains you, right? Like, it doesn't mean that that's what you need to be doing, right? Like, I'm really good at professional development and workshopping. I am really good at it. I can do it, but it doesn't bring me a lot of joy anymore. It drains me, right? Unless it's a certain type of thing that I'm like, this is the one that I want to do for, the next 6 months, right?
Yes.
But, and so why am I going to put myself in a position to do something that does not make me feel good? And so, and that's the reckoning that I had to do. And it wasn't easy. It took a lot of reflection. It took a lot of spending time with myself, right? With me, taking myself out on a date or going on a walk or going to, exercise, and really, really hone in on like, what is it that is serving you and what is it that is draining you? And then from there, tying it to what I value, right? And how I want to live my life. And for me, I wanted to continue to serve our community. I wanted to continue to inform education. And I wanted to help connect people and reimagine their relationship with reading, because I think that we've done a lot of damage in that area. Unintentionally in many ways, right? And I feel complicit to that as a former educator who is like, you're going to answer these questions and you're going to annotate everything and you're going to read all these dead white guys because that's what the curriculum says you have to read. Forget about that. It is, continuing to, push forth stereotypes that are harmful. It's in the curriculum, so we're going to do it regardless of that. So I feel, complicit in a lot of that, and like this is my, like, how do I atone, right? And I do that by like doing work that serves me and the community, and that reignites what reading can be for people in their life.
And it guided you to its current expression, but you could only hear it when you created some stillness and space and prioritized that relationship with yourself.
Absolutely.
And like took seriously the question of what drains me, what gives me energy. That is not a diva question.
No.
Those are clues about your purpose. Those are clues about your highest alignment, your highest expression. And if you follow those clues, what is so taxing and hard can feel seamless and easy to you when it might be very hard to someone else. But those clues are like gold. And then, on the other side of those clues is, are you waiting for someone else to save you, or are you willing to take responsibility for creating the life you want? Understanding that there's massive systemic factors that make it easier or harder for different people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that was, and I think I knew going in, like I knew, okay, I'm closing this chapter, right? Like I can see why I need to do it. I wanted to be able to provide the best. And I was at a point where I wasn't doing that for myself, right? And therefore I couldn't care for others in that way. But knowing that the one system that I'm going into and going into a new one, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to face the same challenges, right? And I find myself doing that even now. Like, I am going into my 5th year, of this, and the other day I noticed a pattern in myself, and I was like, wait a minute, what are you doing? You're recreating. You're recreating at something here that you worked so hard to get away from.
Oh my God,
right?
Oh my God,
And
that's so juicy. That's so juicy.
And because that's what my brain was used to, right? That's what my body was used to. And it was like, and so it's like, we're going to slow things down for a minute, and you're going to say no to those things, because you don't have to say yes to everything. It's not your sole responsibility, right? And you're going to create enough space for you to take care of yourself, and also keep things moving forward, for the nonprofit, for ARCO, and for the bookstore. But like, I don't schedule more than one meeting a day. Like I don't even do that anymore. Where before it used to be like 7 meetings a day.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Oh my gosh. We have an offline conversation to have with each other, because I think we've had a similar a similar transition. Yeah.
And I'm like, no, you're doing it again. Stop.
Yeah. Yeah. Stop. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's ongoing. And it's just
Yeah.
because the world that we live in is extremely demanding, right?
Yeah.
And the work that you're doing, educators especially, and then they're under this constant rapid fire, right? That like, what's going to happen today? But as Dr. Tubbs, shared, is like, what's going to happen tomorrow has already been predicted because it's happened in history before, and it's happening again, right? And so like, don't be surprised by this. Like, equip yourself, take care of yourself, and continue to make the choices that are right every day. And so that's what I'm working on.
Amazing. Oh my gosh. You are a wealth of wisdom and such a bright light.
You.
Anything you want to say before we close that you had in mind that you wanted to surface in our conversation?
I think I'd like to share just a little bit about what ARCO has been able to do.
Yeah.
We're going on 2 years. We're about to celebrate our 2-year anniversary. And so at last count, we have gifted, and we say gifted, not donated books, right? Because it's truly a gift. So at last count, we have gifted over 5,000 books into the neighborhood. I know we have hosted over 176 free or low cost literary events for all ages. It has been a remarkable experience, and the energy that is starting to build and that you can see in the community, like it's beautiful. Like, you used to go to other cities like Boston and San Francisco and New York, and you see people walking around with their book in their hands, and you used to not see that here, right? And now you see it every day. And so
good.
So I just want to thank everyone who has continued to support us and who, has been a part of our growth and our work, because it's definitely making an impact in our community.
So powerful. How can people
you.
support ARCO or find you or just follow what y'all are up to?
Our website is readwitharco.org, and you can support us there if you're interested in possibly volunteering or making a donation. We're going to, North Texas Giving Day is right around the corner, and so we'll have a big campaign to help raise some funds. But we have some exciting things on the horizon in 2026 for ARCO, and I'm excited to share that in the new year. We've just got to raise a little bit more money to make it happen.
Oh,
So,
well, it's amazing. Thank you for your time and for
Thank you,
your
Michelle.
work in the world and for your example of what it looks like to live a life where you care for yourself and your family deeply and well, and that allows you to make an impact in your community instead of the flip of like you give yourself to the community till it hurts and your family and yourself get the crumbs. Like you seem to me to be a real life example of that.
Thank
Thank you.
It took some learning, but we're getting there. Yeah.
Well,
Thank
have
you
an
so
amazing
much.
week.
You too. Thanks for having me.
Bye.
Bye.
Welcome back, Chris.
Thank you.
What jumped out to you from the lovely Claudia Vega?
Several things. One of the, I guess, like smaller but more just administrative, if you will. I loved that you pointed out the scaffolding for her. And when I really kind of thought about those different things, it was interesting to me that as a public educator, it seemed like what really activated her was rebuilding that journalism department and then being at the city and seeing how to create that community of inclusion and then pairing that with the education background. I just thought that was really interesting, and I was glad you used that word.
Good catch on the journalism piece, building that department. Yeah, it's so, I hope listeners will audit their own journey with that scaffolding lens, because there's the whole like, oh, this this served me. This was working in my favor. This thing that felt random actually prepared me for this other thing that also feels random or whatever. But then also, what does it look like to live in your skin, assuming the same thing is happening present day? Because
Say more about that.
Like if we can look back on our lives and see the scaffolding that we couldn't see in the moment, that things that felt random were actually like stacking, then what does it look like to trust that the same is true present day? You know, how do we engage with our experiences? How do we engage with our instincts? How do we engage with our own anxiety? Like all of those things are impacted by, are we trusting the scaffolding of our life?
And this was an interesting interview for me because I've just come back from a week of a retreat at MEA in Santa Fe.
What is
And
MEA for folks?
It stands for Modern Elder Academy, and it is the first wisdom school in our country, is the way that it's presented. So we just did a lot of internal work, and there was a lot of thinking around that. So I was kind of thinking for me about, you know, I started as an accounting and finance person, and then all of a sudden I was a magazine sales rep and then magazine publisher. Then I created Tacky Box and was working inside education. So that's how I understand education. And now we've kind of put all that together to create Oxygen for Educators magazine, podcast. It's just interesting.
Yes.
And I would not have thought of it that way without you using the word scaffolding for so many years now. I've heard you say that, and then kind of doing that work and watching for those patterns. I would have thought, oh, I just make all these jumps from one thing to another. But that from Claudia's story really jumped out at me because I've been swimming in that for a week.
That's I think you're another really, really concrete example for sure. Interesting.
Yeah.
Anything you want to jump to, or do you want me to go?
Well, I'll say, just kind of playing on that week at MEA, her comment about why do we have to wait until retirement age is the reason that Chip Conley, who founded MEA, founded it, because his whole philosophy is, they call him a midlife activist, because he's trying to get people in midlife, which he says could be from 35 to 75, depending on just kind of where you are in your reinvention of yourself. But he just talks about really thinking through what your purpose is, having that midlife unraveling where you unravel our tightly wound obligations, expectation, and identities in order to lighten our load. And he specifically talks about a midlife atrium where we create space to reflect on the second half of our lives, which is exactly what Claudia did, right? Like she talked a lot about, she felt she had no free time, and then she really got introspective and she used the word reflection a couple times about thinking about that. And then in his book, he talks about release yourself from the belief that life will get better if you could just pack more to-dos into today. Delight in the wonder of the world, not just the weight of the world. And I felt like that's what she did, because she had that love of books, love of reading. And then she got to the part that agitated her, which was the, lack of access to it. And then she went into action mode. So it just, coming off of that week, she's like the perfect story of applying that theory.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Okay. There are a couple things you read that I would love it if you'd read again. One is that sentence about, can you just read all that again, and I'll cue into it?
Sure. So it's Brene Brown, by the way, who coined midlife unraveling, but the way that Chip defines that in his book, a time where we unravel our tightly wound obligations, expectations, and identities in order to lighten our load.
Okay. That made me think about an inflection point in my life where I started to think about, like, what are the contracts that I've accidentally co-signed mindlessly about what it means to succeed, what it means to this, what it means to that, and what does it look like for me to start building a life that serves me and the values I care about, even if everyone watching is going, what is happening? What is she doing? And I feel like Claudia did that.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope the people listening are thinking about the spaciousness in their own life in little and big ways to engage in that unraveling and trust it. Like, not be unnerved by it, but really trust that in the unraveling, there's an opportunity for a rebuilding on your own terms. And that doesn't mean a mass exodus or anything. It could mean just changing your relationship to your duties, your students, your community, whatever. But I feel like a lot of people in super high stress, high driving jobs like educators, there's a underlying sense that they don't get to do that.
I think everybody has that reaction.
Yeah.
Everyone has that reaction, because I had the reaction when Claudia said she only takes one meeting a day.
Yeah.
I thought, well, wouldn't that be a dream? But I can't do that. And then, but that's that voice in your head, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the voice that you have to conquer. You talked about that voice, the inner critic, the other day, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then you think about, like, for anyone who hasn't listened to the interview with, I always pronounce Katie's sister's last name wrong, but Shannon Zeiss. Is that right?
Yes, I
Zeiss.
think.
With that, just how she would have been one of those people where you thought, no, you can't reclaim that time. You can't, you have to work in the evenings. But she created this whole culture because she figured that out, and she figured out what she wanted her life to look like.
Yes.
So it can be done, and it can be done inside education. Even Miss Lopez, who was a previous podcast interview, she talked about people wanting to push her into leadership, but she knew, no, I love the classroom. So she stayed there. So there are tons of examples of it. Now, I love the fact that Claudia just went big and cashed in her retirement and decided, I'm going to go create this and create a nonprofit. Like, that speaks to me. But it can be done inside education too.
Yeah. And to Claudia's point, and to things we've both lived and learned, it starts with just the tiniest bit of space to listen inward and to sort of like shift the balance between what voices are ruling your life, external versus internal, and then what's animating the internal voices, and are you hearing them as the voice or a voice? Like, we're getting so esoteric, but I'm hoping people are going with us.
Cross your fingers.
Wait, okay, so that was the first thing that I was hoping you'd say again. Then also talk about the second part.
Yeah, the second is exactly what you just described, creating a midlife atrium where we create space to reflect on the second half of our lives. You have to take that space to think about it. And crazy hippies like me go to MEA and do it in a group setting with 17 other people. And I highly recommend it, by the way.
Yeah. Yes. And if that's not where you're at, I first started giving myself space in 30-second increments. And it was so foreign to me because I had my foot on the accelerator in such an extreme way that I thought was life-giving because of the adrenaline, that just training myself to take 30 seconds where I wasn't driving an agenda or a to-do list or whatever, that was the beginning of my relationship with my inner world. And now it supersedes my relationship with everything. But
we know.
Get in line. Get in line.
Be waiting a while.
But yeah, so like if you're listening and you're going, must be nice, like you said, we all do. Start with those 30 seconds. Just see what happens. And if you're flooded with anxiety because you have not sat with yourself, just see it, trust it, let it pass. And there's something on the other side of that.
Okay, you want me to read the last one?
Yes, please.
Okay, release yourself from the belief that life will get better if you could just pack more to-dos into today. Delight in the wonder of the world, not just the weight of the world. That one really, that hits me still. That's
Yeah.
my biggest challenge.
That's massive.
And I think that's what Claudia did with books and community.
That's massive. And when we're tuned into the wonder of the world, we're all energy. This is not off the charts woo-woo, even though it sounds like it. We're all energy. And when we plug into the wonder of the world, we literally vibrate differently. And that puts our nervous system in a different state, which pulls us out of survival state, which then allows us to see, because when we're in that survival state, our gaze narrows because it has to keep us alive. So everything changes.
Okay, that's
really
the last
beautiful.
one.
Whose quote is it that that whole I'm caught between saving and savoring the world. I can't remember whose quote that is, but it's a good one. It makes me think of the wonder or the weight. It's really beautiful. Thank you.
You're
welcome.
welcome.
Thank you to Chip for doing his work and then sharing his work.
Yes.
Okay. I also cued into that. Why do we have to wait? I think that's a profound question, and it doesn't have to be about retirement dreams. It can for educators, it can literally be like emptying your bladder or something so basic, like how many of folks in those type of jobs have trained their brain that all pleasure comes on the other side of ... instead of weaving in that balance and the wonder in with the inevitable weight. I'm kind of just repeating, but.
Well, and that makes me think of, the most wonderful thing in the world is a child, right? And slowing down to actually enjoy that and remember why you went into this in the first place. And that you started that way. You started as a child just looking for the wonder in the world.
That is our home. That is homeostasis. We've lost it. Yeah. Nice. Oh, I gotta go. Gotta go hang out with some kids.
I do think we're sounding a little woo-woo though. So let's we better get to some.
We'll see. I'm not sure I can ground today, because to me, she's living into what's possible, not easy. But she's just such a 3D example, Claudia is. But I do have other stuff, but it might sound just as goofy.
Bring it on.
Well, I think we would be remiss if we didn't highlight how much of her drive and work is about understanding and honoring the life force of community space. And how she's we're classified as a retail space, but we're a community hub, we're a community space, and that's the driver for her. And that's the thing that unlocks the larger culture of reading. But it's more than culture of reading. It's culture of connection. It's culture of representation, of feeling seen and extending that gaze of I see you. All of that is layered into what she's midwifed and what she and her husband are doing in the world.
Well, and that's where and I think I said this in the intro, but I thought about it's applicable to a classroom. It's applicable to a campus to think about creating that. And I feel like this is going to be an infomercial for MEA, but that was part of what felt that way for me, to spend a week with people that we were so in community. We were talking about, deep things. At one point, we even had to like stand face to face and stare into other people's eyes uncomfortably, for quite some time to practice that, seeing each other.
Yeah.
And then community meals. And it just, that's not everywhere in our world, but you have the opportunity to create that in a school, in a classroom.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's why we say there's so much power in that job, in the role of an educator.
And that grounding of being in deep relationship with the people around us in your classroom, on your campus, in a retreat, like that is such a fabulous counterforce to the body snatching of the digital world. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love it. I love it. And I would run screaming if you asked me to do. I've been in those situations where you have to do that.
Oh, it would not have been your jam, sister.
It's a little too much.
It was a little too much.
If it was a little too much at times for you, then I would have been in the fetal position.
Actually, it was never too much for me, to be honest.
You
might have enjoyed it. You might have been. I think you could have.
I would have enjoyed a lot of it for sure. I've been in those settings before, and it is good and stretchy, and yes. Okay, so the other thing I wanted us to really kind of pay attention to that Claudia is doing so intentionally is honoring the power of representation in the books she chooses and in the way her space feels and the way she holds space for the community to gather, all of that. So important, so insane to me that it's gotten politicized. And such a caution flag around the wound of invisibility, the wound of lack of representation, like all of that, like, that's such a cost to the individual, but it's also such a cost to the community and such a cost to potential and what could be created here. So the fact that she has put her flag in the ground around that and just this sort of standing in whatever storm, and delighting in the hundreds of amazing people that come through her doors and the impact it has on them, that she has put her flag in the ground and she is doing what she's doing with Whose Books, but also with ARCO. I just was totally inspired by that, and hope that Claudia and anyone listening who's doing some version of that knows how many of us stand with them, even in the face of some wacky political waters that are shaping narratives. So many of us stand with you.
It's probably worth just reiterating to the author, I don't remember the name of the book, but
Erased.
Dr. Anna Tubbs, Erased, and how it helped Claudia in these tough times to just remember that the pendulum swings.
Yeah.
And the more of us that are focused on our decisions, our actions, our relationships, we're just in that daily small moment, we're helping that pendulum to swing. We're pushing it.
Yeah.
Pushing it, pulling it, I don't know. But we're
yeah.
helping move it. And so that was a good reminder.
I loved that too. Very grounding. Mm-hmm. What else you got?
Well, the other kind of grounding thing for me came from a comment that Claudia made after she was talking about that, where she said, I think she was talking about what we focus on and listen to. And she made the comment, sometimes I just have to turn off the news. Mm-hmm. So I was going to share lyrics of one of my very favorite Lucas Nelson songs, because I listen to it all the time and I think I live that way, but it's called Turn Off the News. Mm-hmm. And Katie, I'm hoping that you'll link the acoustic version of this song in the notes, because everyone should listen to it, but we know we can't play it without Lucas's permission. So here are the lyrics. I believe that every heart is kind. Some are just a little underused. Hatred is a symptom of the times. Lost in these uneducated blues. I just want to love you while I can. All these other thoughts have me confused. I don't need to try to understand. Maybe I'll turn off the news and build a garden. Just my neighborhood and me. We might feel a bit less hardened. We might feel a bit more free. Turn off the news and raise the kids. Give them something to believe in. Teach them how to be good people. Give them hope that they can see. Turn off the news and build a garden with me. And I feel like that's exactly what Claudia did, a garden of books. And I think that's what everybody listening is doing inside those classrooms and campuses. So I offer that song up as a gift.
Yes, that is what she's doing, a garden of books. And that is what the educators we meet and talk to are doing. Like they are interacting with the people in front of them in a life-giving way. And that supersedes the drama of the larger narrative. Not that we ever would want to turn away from it to the degree that we're not stepping into it as a counterforce, but it would be foolish of us not to acknowledge that currently it's designed to paralyze and enrage us and body snatch us from our real lives. And I feel like those lyrics are like an invitation to plug in a way that keeps you grounded and informed, but not in a way that steals you from love and from your own life. Nice. Has he accepted your marriage proposal yet, or what's happening there?
Not yet. I'm afraid he's going to think I'm a little too old for him, but I'm still holding out hope.
How old is he? Let's see how scandalous this actually is.
I don't really know.
If he's like 18, I'm going to be very alarmed.
No. I think he's in his 30s, I think.
It's fine. He's a big boy.
All right, moving on.
Katie, you might want to cut that. All right. Anything else on your list? I have a couple more.
Go ahead.
I really appreciated her highlighting the hero trap. It made me very reflective of my own participation in that and how that is an emotional trap for educators, and how it's true and it's good that we acknowledge it, especially in a time when the narrative is getting skewed in a different direction. And may the people who hear us say that hear it in a way that doesn't put them in a straitjacket, or doesn't tie their arms in terms of their own humanity.
Well, I had actually did make a note to ask you what you meant by acknowledging your own participation. So I'd love hold that question because I want to hear a little bit more about what you meant by that. But I also thought about if everybody could just listen to Tasha's podcast and be a Barb. Yeah. And I love how you guys talked about it's just showing up and doing the job, because the job itself is so critical and game changing. And that's all you have to do to make a tremendous difference. And I shouldn't say that's all you have to do, because that's a lot. Yeah. But to help just minimize I have to do everything. Yes. I have to be the hero. You already are the hero just by showing up.
Love that. Yeah, I think that's the way to engage with that concept. It's like trusting that just doing the job and showing up in a regulated as much as possible nervous system, you are doing the hero work. And what did she say? Claudia surfaced the question, how do I do this work in a way that doesn't sacrifice me? None of us who see educators as heroic want you to hear that as a you must sacrifice yourself in order to serve the larger good. That was what I meant.
I was going to say the whole point of our podcast is the opposite.
Exactly.
You can't sacrifice yourself. You have to take care of yourself.
Yeah. She lived into that to me. Okay. I also really liked how she talked about that you can be really good at something that actually drains you, and you don't have to do something just because you're good at it. And the conversation we had about how like going toward what gives you energy and paying attention to what drains you and figuring out how you mitigate that was really, it's worth underlining, just that notion that our experience of things and people and, demands on our time, our experience of those things is a compass. It's not random. It's like information that if we can tune into, which you can only tune into if you can create that relationship with your inner world, it will guide you. It will guide you toward what energizes you, and it will help you figure out how to mitigate what drains you.
Do you want to give some examples of when you were kind of going through this and creating your second half, new life? What drained you and what drew you in?
Yeah. God, that feels so long ago. But I mean, I have examples every day. To me, like, I was fueled by the adrenaline of meetings and interactions, but that wasn't. It was like false fuel. It was the adrenaline I was experiencing. As I stepped away and started like creating my own life in service of my nervous system, then I got really much clearer about the ratio of people time and alone time and deep reflective work versus output work where I'm in public. Like all those things, I really got better at kind of balancing by listening to what drains you and what energizes you. And one of my guiding principles was just like unapologetic alignment. So I just try to really pay attention to if something didn't feel aligned to me, then what would it look like for me to take a step in the direction of unapologetic alignment?
So you don't say 40% of the time I'm going to do this, 60% of the time I'm going to do this. You're just gut checking every opportunity.
All day long, every day, all day long, I'm gut checking. And it doesn't always mean I can act on it. Like sometimes I'm like, yeah, this is not feeling right to me, but it's serving because ... And so it's not like it's not like you just, burn it all down because it feels ick. It's more like surgical than that. Yeah. It's more discerning, but it's so playful. It's so playful to get into a relationship with your inner world and see those signs as a compass instead of as like a reflection of a trap you're in, if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah. Did you have anything else on your list?
I think I had one more that I wanted to. Oh, it was that last one. I just think her question, how do I do this work in a way that doesn't sacrifice me? If people listening lived into that question for the next 6 months and just made tiny edits to what gets their attention and how they interact and what they do, they would be feeling really different at the end of that. And probably right away, they would feel different.
Love it. The last thought that I had was just, because I'm like really into this word community now that I pay attention to it in my 48th year. But I just thought a lot about that's really what we're trying to do with Oxygen for Educators is create that community and create that platform and space for people to share stories. So I hope people will let us know if we're accomplishing that, what else we might do better or other ideas, because that's the heart behind why we're here.
Yeah, we want to go where the energy takes the community, and we can only do that if we're hearing from folks. So please let us know how this can serve you.
Yeah.
And I guess big thanks to Claudia. What a remarkable woman. I'm excited to continue to follow her and pay attention to what she's doing. I'm really excited to go see Whose Books. I hope
I want to
people-
go with you.
Okay, let's go
Yeah,
together.
I want to
That would
go.
be
I was
fun.
really interested in checking it out.
Okay, good. We'll do it together.
Field trip.
And then check out readwitharco.org so you can support their work. A huge thanks to Katie Warden, who's behind the scenes producing all of this madness. And we will catch people next time.
All right. Thanks, Michelle.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Oxygen for Educators. Please like, share, and follow. And if inclined, leave us a 5-star review so that we can keep making content for you. Let us hear from you if you know someone we should interview or a topic we should cover.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the guest and host and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any organization. The content is provided for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended as professional advice. Listeners are encouraged to use their own judgment and seek appropriate professional support when needed. Oxygen for Educators, its host and production partners are not responsible for any actions taken based on the information shared in this podcast.